This is my 2012 Volkswagen Jetta TDI. I picked it up about 6 months ago from Copart. It was listed as front end damaged, but honestly just some panel stuff, nothing mechanical. Just under 130,000 miles. It ran great and drove great. For the price, I felt like I got a steal. But yeah, there's always unknown with salvage cars. About 1,000 miles ago, I started hearing a rattling noise. The noise that no DSG owner ever wants to hear. After a bit of diagnosing, I figured out that it was one thing, a failing dual mass flywheel. So stick around and I'll show you how someone without a pro shop or a garage full of specialty tools can diagnose and repair a problem like this. I will mention that I am using a 2-post lift, although if you have jack stands, I've seen plenty of people do this with just jack stands and a jack. It will be a bit harder, but you can get it done. Okay, so the way that I figured out how you diagnose your dual mass flywheel is if you hear that rattling noise and then you put it in drive or reverse, it will go away. And this is because the transmission is basically grabbing on and putting tension on the flywheel, which is keeping it from rattling. What's going on, everyone? It's been a while since the last long form video, and that's just because I'm waiting on all the parts for the SQ5 build. So all I know right now as of this moment is that stuff has been put on a ship from China, but I'll have to blur that part out because you weren't supposed to know that. My bad. So as narrator king, definitely not me, filled you in. I've been driving this thing pretty good for about 1,000 miles. Definitely with totally legal registration and definitely has plates on it, but give or take 1,000 miles. And I started hearing that noise that I played the clip of earlier, and I narrowed it down to a flywheel, went through all the other things. And I'm gonna do very little while I'm in there jobs. I'm just gonna do the transmission service. So we got liquid moly gen oil for the DSG. We got these transmission oil cooler O-rings, then the filter for the transmission, drain plug, crush washer for the transmission as well. And then we got the flywheel bolts, because you really aren't supposed to reuse the old ones. And these are pre-Loctited, the Luck dual mass flywheel. It's quite a bit smaller than I thought it would be. New wrist pin bearing for it. So the way this works is in here there's different springs and bushings. These two parts are connected by just those springs and bushings. And the reason that this is a thing designed like this is to keep engine vibrations away from the transmission and the cabin altogether. That car has just under 130,000 miles. So this is kind of an expected fix. And here's a list of all the stuff that I could have done with the money instead of buying this flywheel. All the different mods that we could have done. So yeah, now that we've gone through everything we're gonna do while we're in there, let's throw the car on the lift and get to ripping this subframe apart. Oh yeah, and one more thing, I don't usually wear hats, but we're gonna keep this puppy on because I'm looking like androgenic when he got his wig snatched. So let's get to working on this thing. So the first thing we could start with was removing the air box. Then we got rid of the battery cover, got rid of the battery. Then we could take out the battery tray to get access to the transmission cooler. So then I clamped off the lines going to the transmission cooler. Then I removed the lines from the transmission cooler just using a flathead, making sure to spill as much coolant on top of my transmission as possible. So then we lifted up the car, giving it the jiggle test, while AB Builds did some questionable things to my front tire. Then we got right on to removing the under tray. It really gets disgusting.
Oh my god.
So then we started poking around to figure out how to get the starter, because that was the next thing on our agenda.
That's the starter bolt right up there. I see some oil, and I told myself I didn't need to do the rear main seal while it was in here. So we're gonna stay true to that. I don't know how to get this off.
You just pull it off.
You're right.
Been in here before, and they hate me. Look what they did. Put the hose clamp on so that the flathead part's up.
On the upside?
Yeah.
It was just the Germans. Comes like that from the factory.
Yeah, I don't know why somebody would even work on this car. Just scrap it. This is the job they were gonna do, and then they're like, nah, just send it to Copart. Total it out.
So then I got the charge pipe out of the way to get more access to the bottom starter bolt.
Oh my goodness. After 20 years of working on it.
Then I got the top bolt for the starter out, and I could start disconnecting all the electrical wires.
There we go. Didn't that?
What?
But now with the starter out, we can remove the 3 bolts holding in the transmission oil cooler. Then I pulled the oil cooler off, managing to spill all of the oil all over the transmission.
I dripped oil everywhere. I dripped oil on my bumper and my headlight too.
In the bumper.
No!
So then I got out a syringe and sucked up the leftover oil so that I could close off the top so that no debris gets into the transmission. Then I disconnected the gear shifter linkage.
Oh look! Look right here, chat.
W's in the shot.
We have our first sneak peek of our flywheel right there.
Then I disconnected all the wires that go to the TCU. Then I undid the first 2 bell housing bolts that were on the top.
Someone get this guy on NASCAR circuit. Holy shit.
So once we got the wheels off, we moved on to the CV axle end bolts. I had AB Builds hold the brake down while I undid it and almost broke my pry bar.
Yes! Somebody put red fucking Loctite on it.
So then we took out the control arm bolts.
We just gotta get the drop link and the steering rack out, and then we can move this to the side. So let's get it in a time lapse so we don't bore you with that.
Two of the triple squares that hold in the CV axle came out no problem.
I have to put it back
The other 4 just kept spinning, so I had to put the axle back in so that we could step on the brake and get it out.
Alright, well, we'll pick up to you guys when we get this off, so let's cut to it. So, we have a stuck ball joint, and we have rented a tool from O'Reilly's.
So it turns out I received the wrong tool. The tool I got was for pressing in new ball joints. The tool I needed was for getting out a stuck ball joint. So yeah, this set us back a few more hours.
Okay, now I've got the actual tool to undo this. I did the other side off camera, and now we'll finally get this bad boy off. There we go.
now we're free, and we just need to disconnect the steering rack under the steering wheel on the steering column. So without further ado, I don't like to do it too much because I didn't pay for the fucking
Extended warranty.
We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Got it.
There it goes.
So then we went ahead and pulled out the dog wheel mount that holds the transmission in, and then we moved on to draining the actual fluid out of the transmission. Then I loosened up all the subframe bolts and took out the singular exhaust hanger bolt. And then with all the subframe bolts out, we could finally drop it down and disconnect the steering rack wires. And then I put all the different subframe bolts back in where they go because they're all unique. Okay, so I don't got one of those fancy engine holder things, so we got some redneck stuff going on. I'm just gonna throw some 2x4s down and stick some 3-inch deck screws into them. So as you'll see in a minute, it turned out that this didn't work and that the engine was actually too heavy for it, so we had to make a revision 2. Alright, so we got the 2x4 on here after a bit of messing around. Got the ratchet strap on there, it's holding the motor. It's not the safest, but I don't think, like, the motor has to go up before this can fall over, so. This was a good thought, but about 10 minutes of extra research would have told me I was making a big mistake. This is the sketchiest thing I've ever done.
Is that dropped all the way?
No, and it keeps moving.
Just keep going slowly.
No, and look at how it's dropped that much. It shouldn't just stay. What's happening was that the 2x4 was bending because it was definitely not strong enough for this application.
Why am I leaking coolant from somewhere? The engine just moved back now. I'm dripping coolant.
Okay, righty then. I made a few iterations at like 1 a.m. last night, but we've got it so that it's at a place where it will hold the weight. So what I did was I turned these on their side so they have more structural strength, and I tested it out with a strap, and I took the motor mount and held it fine. So I'm gonna put 2 straps on it just to be safe, and it's also at a place where it's not rocking anymore. So yeah, basically what happened was I was dumb, okay? I didn't realize there was a second motor mount behind the engine. So I was just picking it up on the one, which was making it want to tilt over. It went back into the firewall, and a coolant hose. Luckily it's nothing massive. It didn't crack or anything. It just is one of the ones with the little clip part that holds it in. So it just flexed and started dripping coolant, I should say, not dumping coolant. So the motor rotated backwards into the firewall, and the coolant leak was coming from a plastic connector going to the heater core. So it wasn't anything massive, and when I moved it back, it all went back to normal and stopped leaking. And now that I know how to make a top mount engine brace out of wood, I will be using it again when I do my timing belt, so stay tuned for that. So I undid the motor mount attached to the transmission, and everything seemed to hold fine. I think we're free. So I'm just gonna go double check that I've undid all of the wiring harnesses, and then we can lift the car up, undo the last few bolts underneath, and then lower it down onto the rolling cart, and then undo the last few bolts that we can get to from the sides, and then we'll be free to swap the flywheel. So let's get to it. So then I quickly just made a template on cardboard with a Sharpie and some holes to screw the bolts in so that I could keep track of where they all went. Then I blocked up the rolling cart because, as it turns out, the oil pan is actually lower down than the transmission. Then I did my final adjustments with the cart before lowering the car down so that the transmission had some pressure off of the motor mount. Then I got my breaker bar and I took out the last 2 bolts that go into the bell housing. Okay, so a slight change of plans here. As you can see, the transmission has to come out this way because there's a spline coming off the block, and that means that it has to clear this frame rail here. So I undid the mount, took off the mount from the transmission here, and I got to make sure not to crack my filter housing for the transmission there. The other thing I need to do is lower the whole engine down. As you can see, I started to do that. As you can see, it's kind of sloped down because I need to get back in here and undo my shifter linkage. It's undone from the clip. I just need to unbolt it from the actual trans body. Then there's, if you can see in that hole, there's another bolt, and that's where so I need to add that to my thing right here. There's another bolt that goes right there. So I need to do that. And so what I have here is 2 straps, and I'm letting one out, and then the other out, and then the other out, just slowly doing this. And then I have my trusty jack under here so that I can make sure it doesn't accidentally just fall on the ground. So I'm gonna continue with that. So I'll throw you guys in a time lapse until I'm ready to just pull the transmission off, because I'm done doing all these weird angles and stuff, because I just need to lock in and get this thing off. So let's jump to that. So then I brought in my trusty cart for hopefully the last time, undid the last 2 bolts, and then I threw a ratchet strap over it so that when I disconnected it from the bell housing, it wouldn't fall off the cart. I've got all of the bolts out. It's splitting. So then once I saw it start to split, I worked it back and forth until it came off. Then I could lift the car up and drag the transmission out, leaving just the flywheel behind. Oh my gosh, this thing, holy crap, that is cooked. And that's what's causing our rattling noise. This is just rattling around. And the reason putting it in gear makes it go away is because this part is engaging. So it's connecting them together more thoroughly. So it's keeping it like, so say this is all spinning and in neutral, this is just like rattling around. But if you put it in drive, it connects it engages the transmission, and you're holding it with the brakes. So this stays. But in neutral, it's just rattling. I'm gonna clean all of these parts up because it looks like it just came out of a junkyard. So once I clean up this subframe and this transmission, I will pick you guys up and we'll fit the new parts. And yeah, pretty excited that I'll be able to drive this thing with the music all the way up and not have to be scared all the time about some noise or something happening and it breaking. So let's quickly do that, and then I'll pick you guys back up when we get it all cleaned. So see you in a minute. This is how, sorry for the audio, I just don't feel like putting that microphone on. This is how I'm doing this. I got 1 bolt threaded in, this one in there, because my impact isn't strong enough to take these out. So now the flywheel can't rotate, so now I can use a breaker bar on these. So let's get it done. Okay, so that came off a lot easier than I thought. So I'm quickly gonna just clean this up real good and figure out how to get this bearing out. It is still smooth, so I could probably still run it, but ideally I'd replace it because I am already in here and I have the replacement. But I think you need a slide hammer for that, so I might need to go rent a slide hammer and return the fork to get out the ball joints at the same time. But yeah, I'm gonna clean this up really good, clean up my other parts, I didn't do that yet, and then we'll be at the halfway stage and we'll be ready to put this thing back together. So let's get to it. Then I took off the oil pan sound deadening and the transmission bell housing seal and just cleaned everything up real good with degreaser. And then with that, I also decided to take the time and clean up my subframe, so I painted the subframe black and my control arm black, and then I did my sway bar in red. Go follow the Euro King TikTok if you want to see shorter installs and refabs like that. Hang on. Yeah, so it does go on a certain, it is keyed. They put the bolts in a certain orientation. You see that?
I think it's going in. Maybe it is, yeah.
Oh, don't, yeah, leave it there for a second. Might have forgotten something crucial. Some of you eagle-eyed viewers might have realized there's supposed to be a bell housing seal on there. It's a good thing I realized that it wasn't on there when I did, or else I might have tainted the flywheel bolts and had to buy new ones. And the bolts that hold the flywheel on are actually stretch bolts, which means that I had to torque them down to 3 different torque settings so that they all would get an even stretch. So then once I got them all torqued down twice, I added a 90-degree mark and then just torqued them to 90 degrees. So then I removed my locking bolts and moved on to doing the DSG service. And I think that this transmission has never had a service before because that filter was really disgusting. Then I tilted over the whole transmission to get every drop of that old crusty fluid out of there. Then I put my new drain bolt back in, and I'm not refilling it or putting a new filter in it just because I don't want it to be super heavy when I'm putting it back in the car. And with that transmission service done, we're now at the halfway mark, which means we can start putting it back in the car and mounting it up to the new flywheel. So then I got the transmission splines aligned with the flywheel splines. I got out my template and put the bolts back in where they go. And then we could finally remove the rolling cart, bringing the car down and putting on the motor mount. With the transmission holding its own weight now, we could finally take away the sketchy wooden top mount that we made ourselves. And then I could mock up the freshly restored subframe and just look at how good this thing turned out. Then I bolted up my shifter linkage bracket before I could finally bring in the CV axles, making sure that I bolted them down in a star pattern. And then with that done, I could move on and do the same thing on the other axle. And then with all the drive stuff done, I could bring in the beautiful subframe and bolt it up to the frame and bolt the control arms down to the hubs. And with that all in, I could bring in the sway bar drop links and attach those. And with both of those installed, I could bring in the dog bone mount and attach that to the transmission. And I guess this day I was just flying through it because I didn't take too much care when attaching the tie rod ends. Okay, well I wasn't going to show this, but I'm man enough to show it. I'm a moron. I was putting this on upside down. My dumbass rotated these when I was repacking the bushings and replacing them. That would be why. Didn't. So, yeah. No harm done. Let's carry on. Well, with that hiccup in our past, I could attach the steering rack underneath the steering wheel. And then I moved on to the engine bay, attaching the bell housing bolt that's inside the starter cutout, then the starter, and then I attached the 2 bell housing bolts that are on top of the transmission. I could put on the O-rings for the transmission cooler, put on the transmission cooler, bolt it down, and put the lines on for the coolant. Then I could bring in my driver's quarter, attach it to the bumper, install the fender liner, and then the wheel. And since I don't have the specialty tool to fill the transmission through the drain port, I attached a hose and filled it through the filter port. And the way to do this is by overfilling the transmission slightly and then draining out the excess amount of oil. And if you're going to do it this way, you want a hose that fits just inside the filter port like this. And then with that done, I could install my filter and my filter housing, torquing it to spec, before finally cleaning the area and torquing down the transmission cooler bolts. Then I could bring in my battery tray and my air filter, along with my battery and my felt liner. Okay, so now as you can see, we've got it all put back together. So the next thing to do is to start it up and to complete the DSG service. And the way I'm gonna do that is start it up, lift it in the air, and then I'm gonna run it through all the different gears and then shut it off and drain the fluid down to the right level, because the way this gearbox is designed, it has 2 different dipsticks inside, and one is higher up than the other one, so it keeps the fluid at the correct level. The reason I have to run it through all of the gears first is to just move all the transmission fluid around, and then once I drain it out, obviously it'll be at the correct level. So yeah, without further ado, let's give her a startup. And then I raised it up and drained out some fluid, and it's supposed to have 5.2 liters. We put 6, so a bit less than a liter should come back out. With that done, I could put on the new crush washer and bolt down my drain bolt. Then I could follow that up with a skid plate, and then I could take it for the first drive. Okay, and of course, as soon as I put the entire car together, I get the boots in the mail for the tie rod ends. So let's quickly install those. And also, not proud of it, but man enough to show it. The bolt that holds the CV axle in, might have not tightened it down, and I might have driven all the way across my city. So let's quickly do that, and also let's just check the torque rating on it right now, because it's about 1 Dugga with a chrome socket on it. So let's take a peek at that. So let's quickly throw it in the air, get these boots on, let's check it out. And I could throw it in the air, take the wheel off, and then I just cut the old boot off, put some new grease in the new boot, and then just slid it on with the new wire tie. Okay, so let's see how tight this is. It's supposed to be around 200 foot-pounds, 140 foot-pounds, I think. So let's go up to 50 foot-pounds. Still tighter, I guess that's a good sign. Okay, 70. There's 80 foot-pounds. Okay, maxed out, 90 foot-pounds. Is at 85 foot-pounds and it needs to be at 140. So there you go. Not terrible, not gonna kill us, but still good to know. I always keep that fully torqued down. So, all right, so I built up a new one. There we go, new boot. So let's stick this bad boy on here. Also, I have to tear this thing apart because I somehow have a transmission leak. It smells like transmission fluid, so I bet that it's coming from my transmission cooler, even though I replaced brand new O-rings at $5 per O-ring. So, okay, sway bar end link on. All right, so I took the entire battery tray and air intake box all apart again. And it turns out oil cooler, the bottom half has oil passage. So, and there's 2 new O-rings that I just replaced. The oil goes up into that, and then the top half, 2 coolant hoses go in, and it basically like a little heat exchanger. And I think what happened was that oil cooler still had some oil in it. So when I turned it upside down and put it on the O-rings, I think some oil came out, and I think I just wasted the last hour and a half of my time. So yeah, I put it all back together because it's not a leak. There's no oil on this under tray. So I don't know. I'll take the under tray off periodically and see if I have any oil, because it'll be on it right here, because it drips down right here. We can stick all these under trays back on. I think we're good to go, and I think I just worked myself up. And it looks like it was just oil from flipping over the transmission cooler, because it's been about a week now that I'm editing this and it hasn't leaked anymore. Thank you for watching. I think I'm gonna call it here. And I think the next video on this car will be either coilovers or lowering springs. Probably lowering springs because the flywheel cut into the car's budget a little bit. Unexpected cost. So yeah, please subscribe. I know like 95% of you guys aren't subscribed. Really helps out the channel, helps me grow. So please do that, and then share and like, all that kind of good stuff, because I'm really trying to grow this channel, because the more you guys that watch it and support us, then the more I can do builds. And please follow along for the journey, because just spending time in the garage and getting to get better and do that kind of stuff on cars, which is my growing passion. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you like cars, especially Euro ones, then follow me.